All right, bringing on Dave Meltzer here to talk about the UFC show on Saturday. Doing a little home and home. I was on Observer Radio, so bringing Dave on the Fight Game podcast. Dave, when you look at the pay-per-view buy rate for the last two shows, so the UFC show and the AEW show, do you think that bodes a little bit better for the UFC show this weekend? Because on paper, this is one of the I don't want to say it's one of the worst because there are some good fights on it, but just from a actual star power point of view, not great for what you would have to spend, $65.
I look at I look at the show, and like you said, there's some good fights, but I don't think anyone knows Felicia Spencer, and Amanda Nunes isn't a draw, even though she's a great fighter. So yeah, I would if I'm looking at this under normal circumstances, I'm going to say 100,000 buys, and with the fact that it's not on television pay-per-view and only streaming, less than that. But maybe the last two pay-per-views have both done way, way above what everyone expected. So maybe the sign that people aren't getting together means that there's going to be more buys because people aren't getting together. And there are no sports bars, because this might be a show where a UFC fan would go, I'll go to the sports bar and watch it. I'm not going to pay $50. But there's no sports bars open. So maybe it's just one of those things where, maybe, I'm a UFC fan. It's Saturday night. So maybe, but it's not going to be a big number. I can't see it possibly being 200,000, put it that way.
Felicia Spencer, I guess her biggest fight to date was against Cyborg, and she lost, but she did not get knocked out in that fight. But goes into the fight.
She never threatened her once.
No, heavy underdog. I can't imagine that she has much of a chance here, but just the fact that we're in this kind of weird reality with training camps and situations. Do you think that gives her whatever small chance there is? Do you think that bodes a little bit better for her, or does it not matter whatsoever?
I don't know what kind of training she's doing, so I couldn't really answer that. There is an advantage if you're in places where you can train and have more partners than other places where you don't. So perhaps, but I don't know.
The other fights on this show: Sun Xiao, Cody Garbrandt, Aljamain Sterling, Sandhagen. What on the main card? What is the fight that you are looking forward to the most?
Cody Garbrandt fights are always fun, so I would say that one. Although Sandhagen's looked really good of late, really, really good. And Sterling is, right there in line for a bantamweight title shot right now, pretty close. So I'm the most intrigued by that fight in the sense of the winner of that fight. If they're going to go with Peter Yan and Jose Aldo for the vacant bantamweight title, which is what Dana White said, I would say that the winner of really, the winner of Sun Xiao and Garbrandt, I don't know that Garbrandt's lost a lot of fights, so I don't know that you can go with him. But I do think that the winner of Sandhagen and Aljo, I do think that winner could get, very strongly get the next title shot. So I think they're fighting for, if not a title shot, they're fighting for one, being in, pretty close to a title shot. So that's I guess that's the other important fight.
What did you think of the Apex versus the arena that they ran in Jacksonville, as far as just the ambiance of the empty arena show? Did you notice any difference? Did it feel any different at all, or you didn't?
Yes.
It didn't really matter.
To me, it felt different. It felt I don't know. It felt more under controlled. You could see, in the background, you always saw them spraying down the rings between every spraying in the cage between every fight. The precautions were much higher, partially probably because of Nevada, and partially, maybe because they were criticized for the last shows that they did. But I mean, as far as the fights themselves, smaller cage, so smaller cage seems to be, more finishes. That's kind of the rule in a smaller cage. So I mean, there's that. More explosive action. But every card since they've come back has been good. The one on Saturday, was really good. There's not as much movement, so you get more. It's actually a lot smaller. So.
It did remind me a little bit of when WWE would kind of go in the background of the PC, and then you'd see the gym, or you'd see just normal hallways that you could tell is not the hallway of a venue. It's the hallway of an office, like leading to an office or something. And I thought that was a little. It wasn't jarring to me, but it almost made it look like, as far as the Apex was concerned, it made it look like, it just reminded me like, oh yeah, we're not in an arena, we're just in this thing. This is kind of the present day of what we're doing. Whereas in Jacksonville, I didn't really think of it that way.
I completely agree with you. It hit me, and I wasn't. It was not anything that I was expecting to be different, because it's an empty arena show. It doesn't matter where, but it did. It felt like there were. Well, there were more restrictions, and it was Jacksonville, they were at a major arena, and this is like a real small place. It's just a small place. It's a difference between Daly's Place and the Performance Center. Right. You know what I mean? It's very much like that.
We talked about this on your show, but I kind of wanted to ask you, relation to Dana White. I imagine it's really hard for him to make fights right now, whether it's athletes who maybe don't want to fight right now, maybe they're not in their best shape, they don't want to lose, knowing that those losses pile up and they could be cut. Do you sense that the fighters have any sort of leverage here? Because we just saw the John Jones thing, and it's clear, at least to Dana, that Jones doesn't really have any leverage to make more money for a big fight. But what do you see from the other fighters? Because it definitely looks to me like, as far as Dana's concerned, that he's having a tough time putting fights that he wants to put together.
Yeah, but once the ESPN deal signed, the leverage of the fighters went way down.
Yeah.
They needed to. They needed to organize as soon as that deal was done, the pay-per-view deal, because it's like, okay, now, if you don't do something now, because you've got that lucrative ESPN deal that you don't want to lose, so that's the pressure on UFC. But UFC can wait out the fighters. That's the thing with the fighters, is they're living hand to mouth. So it's tough. It's tough to and they know it, and their careers are short. And it's hard in a sport like UFC to bargain, but that's also why they're making what they're making as compared to what the percentage that the players in the major team sports are making, because or boxing, because boxing was so built on draws, and the structure just got so big that it's just like, this is what boxers make, even if it doesn't make even sense. Whereas with fighters, it's like, this is what MMA fighters make, because they were, held down because of, the company originally wanting to make giant profits, and now the company, I guess the giant profits, so they would be able to sell it at a big price, which is how it ended up. And then now they have to make big profits because they've got to fund the losses for Endeavor, and they've got their own, those loans that they have to pay the interest on. So, they can't give the fighters, the percentage that these other companies do. Still, the fighters still should be making a lot more money, but that's the situation that we're in. But the leverage that McGregor and John Jones had went way, way down as soon as the ESPN pay-per-view deal was signed.
The new rule that it looks like for sports, where international travel can happen again. Does Dana still do the Fight Island thing? Does he still need to do it?
He doesn't need to do it, and I don't see any reason to do it now. Because the whole reason of doing it was because they couldn't get people into the United States. It's like, why bother? If you can run Vegas every Saturday night, why go to the middle of nowhere? It's just an incredible expense that you don't need, especially now because, there are no live gates. It's like, even though that they have like guaranteed money and everything coming from television, it's like you want to keep the profits up. You can, do these cheaper shows as far as like, running in your own building and everything like that. And rather than fly people all over the world.
Yeah. No, it just seems like, once that happened, I just immediately wondered, like, does this dude have to go through it? But it seems like he worked so hard that he still wants
so
to
hard.
do it.
They've worked so hard on setting things up over wherever they are. But it's the cost of doing business.